All right, guys, here we are with another episode. Today we have Louis Essig, and he was actually my first guest on the first podcast that I did, but that was back around 2020, and a lot's happened since then. So, and that time when we did it, you didn't really tell your whole story. It was like a 30-minute Skype video, so I really wanted to get in depth. And this guy continues to amaze me with everything he continues to accomplish, and I'm just going to let him tell his story. So, Louis, go ahead.
We go back to 2016. I'll qualify myself, I guess, as to why I deserve to sit here and tell my story. So I'm a person in long-term recovery. My sobriety date is July 3rd, 2016. That gives me just over 8 years of continuous sobriety, which when I hit that 8-year mark, I was astonished as I was sharing it that it had been 8 years. Because I remember, year one or week one, people with multiple years just thinking that it's impossible. And so to accomplish a substantial amount of time is a miracle. I come from a family of alcoholics, drug addicts. My sister is in recovery currently. My mother passed away of an overdose 4 years ago. She struggled with alcoholism her whole life. It's one of those things where it was hard, but I understand the disease of addiction, so I know why it happened. I know why she passed away. So that makes it a little bit easier. My grandfather died of cirrhosis of the liver, drank himself to death. So it's safe to say that my genes suck, I guess, is one way to put it.
Right.
I don't have the best genes in the world.
You inherited that.
I inherited probably more than just a defect. I probably have a couple. But now that I'm in recovery, things are going okay. I'll tell you how I grew up. So I grew up in Grandview Heights, white picket fence neighborhood, really good upbringing. Dad raised me properly. I didn't have any needs at all, not even close to any needs, and I certainly didn't really have any wants. Christmases, birthdays, there were always gifts, there's always food, there's always clothes. There was always money to go to the movies on the weekend, whatever. So I can't sit here and bitch and moan about struggling as a kid. It's just not a part of my story. I always talk about DARE in 5th grade, and it was the first educational piece I received on alcoholism and addiction. And, the cool thing about that is part of what I do today, or actually tomorrow, I'm going to the middle school in Grandview to speak to the 8th grade students. And it's cool to be able to bring something into school districts that I didn't have. Like, yes, I had DARE, but I didn't really have any real life examples of what could happen.
Right.
If you become alcoholic, or if you are alcoholic, or however you want to word it. But yeah, DARE basically told me don't abuse alcohol or use drugs. You're going to ruin your life. And that was enough for a long time. I was deathly afraid of alcohol and drugs. I was under the impression that if I used them, I would there would be immediate consequences. So I would drink on a Friday night, and by Sunday morning, my life would be falling apart. That's the impression that DARE gave me. Obviously, that's not how it happens. Right. I'll fast forward again to my freshman year of high school. That tumultuous feeling of wanting to fit in. It's a recurring theme in my story. I always felt like I didn't belong. I mean, shit, man, I wouldn't be honest if I didn't tell you that I still have days today where I feel like that. Mm-hmm. I've always longed to fit in, and I think most humans do. And I think that's what drove me, or at least part of what drove me to drink and to use. So I was dealing with that as an 8th grader moving into high school. I wanted to play sports. I did great my freshman year. I made honor roll. No consequences from anything, was a good kid. Sophomore year rolled around, Thanksgiving break, sophomore year. The thing about Grandview is it's a very small community. So I graduated with 92 kids. And what happens is you grow up with these kids K through 12. And I started to watch some of my buddies that I was friends with since kindergarten go out and party. And, they'd come back to school Monday and their lives weren't ruined. And I wondered, why not? That's what I was taught.
Right.
Is that if I did these things, my life was going to fall apart. And they'd come back to school and they'd tell me how great it was. And so I just assumed I was being lied to. So eventually I decided to go to a party. Like I said, Thanksgiving break sophomore year, drank some beer, smoked some weed. It was an incredible evening. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it wasn't. I didn't drink too much. I didn't throw up. All it did was make me feel really good, that warm, fuzzy blanket feeling that takes over your body.
Enhanced everything.
Yeah, everything was enhanced. I could like talk to people, especially girls. And right then and there, I was like, well, this is what I'm missing. Yeah. I just need to do this and I'll fit in and, I'll belong in society. But I wanted to make sure I took it easy. So I would do it like once a month or once every 2 months. I'd go out to a party. And I suffered no consequences for a really long time after that first drink and drug. By the time I was a senior, I was a professional alcoholic addict. I didn't know it at the time, but I was smoking weed every single day. I was drinking on open lunch. So at Grandview, we had this thing called open lunch where we could leave the school. And I would love to go to my friends' apartments or in a parking lot in a car, and I'd drink alcohol and smoke weed or whatever we had at the time. I'd put it in my body, come back to school blasted, whatever. I was always the kid that I didn't really have to try in school. I could like put in very little effort and get a B.
Right.
Good thing, bad thing, I don't know.
Right. But
I never really had to apply myself to do okay. And partying became the most important thing in my life. I started selling some drugs to kids. It's a well-off neighborhood. I'm no genius, but I knew that the kids around me had money, and it was a quick way to pay for my drugs. So I didn't have to buy my own. It was genius, Didn't care about getting caught by the cops, nothing like that. Didn't think it could happen. I was a bulletproof 18-year-old. When I went to apply to college, I applied to one university. It was Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, because of their Halloween party. I applied to no other schools. I made no other attempts to apply to other schools. I just knew my grades were good enough to go to OU, and I'd go down there and party and keep doing what I was doing. My senior year, the summer between my senior year of high school and freshman year of college, I was introduced to Oxycontin. This was 2009. Went to my dealer's house to re-up on some weed, whatever else, and he handed me some pills and was like, "Can you sell these?" He wasn't trying to sell me the pills to use. He was trying to sell me the pills to sell for him. And I took the pills. I was like, yeah, I'm sure I can get these off. Didn't really know what they were.
Right.
I just knew that I could make money on them, and I took them home. And, I had to try my product. I had to know what the hell I was selling to people.
A good salesman has to believe what
exactly.
He's selling, right?
Yeah, and I tried that shit, and boy, oh boy, did I believe in it.
Yeah.
Really quick. I believed in it with everything in my being. I remember telling my friend Bruno, even, and he can attest to this, our film guy on our podcast. I remember telling him, like, bro, you got to try this. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the most amazing thing. I'm getting like goosebumps talking about it. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the most amazing thing that I've ever found in my life. And I would do that with a lot of my friends. And I remember some of them would be like, hey man, probably shouldn't mess with that. But I didn't give a shit. If you didn't want to spend time with me or you didn't like what I was doing, you can get lost. And that was my attitude. I was an asshole. So I started using Oxycontin every single day from that point forward. By the time it came time to go down to OU, I was nervous. I went down there. I'd pass my classes during the week, and I'd come home on the weekend, get my drugs, go back down to Athens. I did that for 2 quarters. They were quarterly back then, and I dropped out. I called my dad, bawling my eyes out as an 18-year-old man, and I told him I was uncomfortable, that I didn't feel like I fit in, and I was going to come back to Columbus, go to Columbus State, and transfer to OSU. I was never going to do that. It was just a story to make him feel better about things, Mm-hmm. I knew I wasn't going to do it, and I came back to Columbus. I got a job flipping burgers, and moved in with my girlfriend and sold drugs, and it sounded like a great option.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I missed a part there. Did you say you quit college?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I dropped out of college 2010.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't even last half a year.
Gotcha.
Down at OU.
It's because of the addiction?
Yeah, it was like I knew what was back home, and it was just calling to me. I had to go home to be comfortable, what I thought was comfortable, which was, the drug dealers, the drinking, the using, the people that wanted to drink and use like I did.
Right. At the time, though, did you realize that's why you wanted to do it? Or was it some kind of, I don't know if I really want to do this for a career. I don't even know if I'm the college type. I want to do this later. I could just have fun for now.
The pressure and the expectation to go to college that Grandview puts on you is extreme. I went to fucking school for computer science, Mike. Okay, there's a lot of people that if I told them that was my major and I graduated, they'd think I was a fucking genius. All right? What in reality, what that meant was I like to tinker with computers, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I just picked computer science as a major. And I remember sitting in that first lecture, listening to the guy talk about whatever the fuck he was teaching about. I don't even know. And I was like, oh shit, I'm in over my head here. So I think it was a combination of like the drugs and the alcohol, not believing in myself, not fitting in, and just not being prepared at all.
And listening to these teachers, these lectures and this stuff, like it's not very interesting to you. You're thinking still about the night before, the weekend prior, and how much fun that was. And now you're sitting in this class trying to stay awake, I'm sure, right?
Yep.
Hungover.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I was just always told I had potential, whatever that means. Still don't really love that word today. I didn't last very long in college. Ran home. I think ran is the best term to use because that's exactly what I did. And I was just like, I'm going to sell drugs and work a job, whatever the hell that job is. And I did that for a while. And around 2012, Purdue Pharma, everybody knows Purdue and OxyContin, synonymous, and the whole opiate pandemic. They changed the formula of OxyContin. So you used to be able to crush these pills up and snort them, shoot them, whatever. They changed the formula so you couldn't do that. And it disrupted the entire economy, if you will, in that world. Because you couldn't abuse them the same. The prices of the ones that were left on the market that you could shot through the roof. And an alternative hit the market, and that was heroin.
Gotcha.
And I remember using heroin for the first time. I was actually at work. I was flipping burgers. I, at this point, knew I was physically dependent on opiates. I would get sick without them, go through withdrawals. And I had somebody offer me heroin at work. Whatever it took to feel better, I was going to do. And so I locked myself in the bathroom, snorted a line of heroin. And that was the first time I used heroin. Not a very smart, safe thing to do. I always tell people, if that doesn't give you an idea of the total disregard I had for my life at that point, I don't think anything will. And my life spiraled pretty quickly after that. I remember within 6 months, like breaking up with my girl. I didn't break up with her. She broke up with me. Getting kicked out, moving back home with my parents, losing the job. Any meaningful relationship that I had left from high school at that point was destroyed. I couldn't keep $1 in my pocket. And, I kind of tucked my tail and went home to mom and dad.
So if you could, in case the viewers don't know what dope sickness is, can you describe that?
Yeah, a lot of people use the flu as a comparison. And to me, they're like two very different beasts. Like, don't get me wrong, the physical part of withdrawal from opiates, I mean, you're talking about muscle aches, you're talking about hot and cold flashes. You don't sleep. You can't fucking sleep. That's the worst part. No appetite. You can't eat. You're very weak, lethargic, depression, anxiety. I mean, you name it, and it's a part of it. But the part that's different than the flu is the mental obsession that goes on.
So you have the physical part of the addiction and the psychological part, which makes it so hard to kick. But with the withdrawal, like me personally, with my experience with some of the drugs that I dabbled in and the alcohol, I never got to the point where I experienced withdrawal. So I would typically feel better when I quit. I think that's why it's so difficult to kick an opiate, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're deathly ill. And I always tell people, think about the worst flu you've ever had. Okay. Picture the worst flu you've ever had. I'm going to put an Advil on the table in front of you. And I'm going to tell you that when you take this Advil, you're going to feel better within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think survival instinct in most humans is going to lead you to reach for that fucking pill on the table.
Right. No matter what.
And
even if you say, but if you take this Advil, you'll want more. I don't care. I want to feel better.
I want some relief.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the simplest way to describe it. But that mental obsession that goes on, especially, as we learn more about alcoholism and how it's a disease, I know for me, I believe I have the disease of alcoholism. Mm-hmm. When I put a mood or mind-altering substance in my body, it kicks something off in my brain that I describe as a mental obsession, and I can't fucking stop.
Right.
I can't stop thinking about it. It runs my day. That's what makes it especially difficult to quit.
So this stigma where people say, why don't you just quit? You think you could lock somebody in a room and just give them a few weeks without it. It's not that easy because they're not feeling better without it. They're feeling worse. And you can actually die from withdrawal.
Yeah. So, it's if you have a heavy habit, you're probably looking at a week of hell and then a month of extreme uncomfortability just across the board.
Right. If you tried to kick it cold turkey. Yeah.
I've done it in jail numerous times. And
what do they do in jail? I was always curious about what they do in jail. If you go in there and you say, hey, I'm a heroin addict.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through withdrawal. Do they put you in a certain medical tank or?
So it's different now.
Okay.
I know that, and I'll speak for the jail that I know. I know that they do give you Suboxone or Subutex or something for withdrawals. They did not used to do that.
Right.
So
they'd put you in there and say, well,
you shouldn't
have used it.
Yeah, I would get booked in. The nurse would always ask me, you got any, you got a drug problem, you want any substances? And I remember actually after the first couple of times getting arrested, I told them I didn't even have a problem. And I did that so that when I got moved up to my tank, I could work them for ibuprofen and shit like that to help with withdrawals. If I told them I was withdrawing, in my mind, they were going to just, no, we're not giving them shit.
Yeah.
And so I remember I would do things like for med call, I'd go up to the dep and be like, hey man, I banged my arm getting off my rack. Can I get a couple ibuprofen? Anything for some kind of relief because they didn't do anything for you.
Right.
I remember vividly one time talking to a nurse trying to get something, and she told me, she was like, listen, baby, you just let it out of your body. Every time you throw up, every time you get sick, that's poison leaving your body.
Wow.
And I don't know why that stuck with me, but I would think about that every day as I went through the withdrawals, all right, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Doing it from the street is a different beast. I've never been able to quit opiates from the street.
Because of the access to it.
I couldn't do it.
Right.
I could not do it. I would steal, I would rob, I would do anything to get that fix. Mm-hmm. I always had to be locked up to get clean.
And that's for some of the skeptics of the criminal justice system. Well, locking them up doesn't do anything. Well, it does do something. It pumps the brakes at least for a little while to where you can get some time away from it. Because I wouldn't have stopped drinking and driving and doing all the things I did had it not been for jail.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, most of the people I know, probably 90% of the people that are in recovery, jail was that catalyst toward change.
Yeah, I agree 100%. In fact, I've, back then I'd get pissed off, and it wasn't even justifiably so, but, why are they locking me up? I need help. I'm an addict. Da-da. And today, I still affiliate with people in special docket programs, and there's times where I'll see someone stumble and they need to go do a couple days.
Right.
To dry out and start over.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if I'm in active addiction, I'm in jail, I'm safe. Mm-hmm. I'm safer there than I am on the street.
Right.
And for some people that's the case. Jail is a better option.
Yeah, well my mom used to pray for me to go to jail, when I was out running around.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I would call her from jail, she was thanking God because it was an answered prayer.
She knows where you are.
She knows where I'm at. Yeah. She knows I'm safe. Jail's not the best place for me, but it's better than what I was doing because I was going to kill myself.
Exactly. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I know some people don't. I know I needed it.
Yeah, that was me too. And maybe not for some. I mean, I know some people that can go to Maryhaven or go to a recovery clinic, and that's enough. It's all about what we talked the first time. We didn't catch it on the podcast, but it's all about that surrender. When you're willing to admit that you cannot manage this on your own, you're willing to surrender, whatever that is, right?
Yeah, it just becoming willing to admit, I can't do it.
Right.
I can't do this on my own. I can't quit. I need help. And, dude, it took me years to get to that point. And I think part of it towards the end was just not giving a shit anymore.
Right.
So after I used heroin for the first time, it was just a rapid decline.
And that was, you said you were at Five Guys and Fries?
Yeah.
And a coworker offered you heroin.
Yeah.
You went in the bathroom, shot it up, and you were like, where you been all my life?
Yeah. I mean, it was cheaper too.
Right. Cheaper than
at first.
Oxycontin.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Oxycontin was expensive, and so it was cheaper, and I was just like, sweet, I'll just switch to this. I don't, I just slowly over the years, I started to care less and less about myself and what happened to me. And, when I moved back home with mom and dad, a good example of caring less and less about myself is this. I mentioned that I didn't have any meaningful relationships left in my life. Didn't feel like I fit in or belong. Mom was an addict alcoholic, so she gets me. Mm-hmm. And I started using with mom. She was prescribed Oxycontin for a number of years. And my dad lost his insurance at some point in between 2010 and 2012, and she started seeking pills from the street. I was happy to help her with that. Mm-hmm. Because it meant someone to use with. Misery loves company. Right. And I could make a couple bucks. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just the truth. Yeah. I made profit off selling drugs to my mom.
Right.
Well, I mean, I needed shit for myself.
Yeah. Well, the sober you may not have done that, but when you're in that full-blown addiction, it takes away your moral compass, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And if I could, make a couple bucks off mom, get high with mom, it's good enough for me.
Right.
A couple months after I moved back in with mom and dad, I had a buddy that invited me to go somewhere where people in recovery go. And I went and listened to a guy tell his story, kind of like I'm doing today. And I remember I went up to him afterwards and I thanked him, which is weird for me. I don't do that. Yeah. I don't know why I did it to this day, but I did. And I remember telling him that we had one key difference, because that's what I always did. I looked for differences, not similarities, because I wanted to point out how you were worse than me, or you had a different upbringing than me, or whatever the case may be. So, because I thought I was different. Right. And I told him, I said, there's one key difference. You've had legal consequences. I haven't had one. Right. And he told me, he said, keep doing what you're doing and you'll find yourself in a jail cell. And I walked out of that room thinking that he was one of the biggest idiots I'd ever met. And that's simply because Lewis is the king of his kingdom. Lewis is the god in his world, and he's getting high. And I thought I could outsmart anyone. This dude doesn't fucking know. Do you know who I am? Right. You know who I am? No, you don't. Why the fuck would I get arrested? I'm smarter than you.
Right.
And lo and behold, a couple months later, I found myself in a jail cell for the first time. And they were for felonies. So that's life-changing for many.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was life-changing for me. It still is today. And once I went the first time, man, I was just in and out. And first couple times, I didn't fare very well in jail. As you can see, I'm not a very big guy. But after a couple of reps, just like practicing for a sport, after a couple of reps, I understood the etiquette and how to move and what was valuable and what wasn't.
Right, it's a code.
Yeah.
The unwritten code.
Yeah. And once you learn that, it's a lot easier. And so I'd go in and out a month, a week, couple weeks, a month, whatever, and I'd get out and I'd do the same shit. After, let's see, when did Dad sell the house in Grandview? Probably 2013, he sold the house in Grandview, and we moved out to the west side of Columbus. Still getting high with mom. I had some run-ins. I actually had been arrested with my mother before. We both we were shoplifting. We got pulled over by the Franklin County sheriffs, and I remember they were taking me to jail no matter what because I had a warrant. But mom was driving, And we had all these they were like toys that we would steal from like Walmart and Walgreens. And they were all in the back seat. The cops stopped us. I had the warrant. I knew I was going. And they told my mom, they were like, hey, just admit to what you guys are doing and we won't arrest you. She wouldn't fucking admit it. So Mom and I both went to jail that night. Mom got an OR. She got out on her own recognizance.
It was her first offense.
Yes. And I did not.
Right.
And she did not bond me out.
Right.
And if she had the money, she probably still wouldn't bond me out because the drugs come first.
Yeah.
And if I was in her shoes,
right,
I would have done the same thing.
Right.
So once we moved out to the west side of Columbus, at this point I'm a full-blown IV drug user. I'm shooting crack cocaine, powder cocaine, heroin. I've done meth a number of times. So, I'm fully strung out. I have nothing but the clothes on my back.
And something you had said was before, you told yourself at one point you would never use an IV, and now that's all you're doing is IV. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I remember thinking I would never take pills when I was first smoking weed. And then, next thing you know, I'm taking some Adderall, some Vicodin, whatever. Okay, fine. I'll never snort pills.
Right.
Okay, next thing you know, I'm snorting some Oxycontin. No, but they're prescription drugs. They can't be that bad. Oh, okay, I'll just snort the heroin.
Right.
Oh, and then the day came where I only had $10. $10 wasn't enough to get me where I wanted to be.
Right.
So I started shooting heroin. And once you pick that needle up,
yeah,
that's the only way to use drugs.
Right.
I got to the point where, in my humble professional opinion, I was wasting the drugs if I did not inject them.
Right.
I will say this, it's one hell of a feeling injecting drugs. But yeah, it was the only way to use. And, after a while, Dad had seen enough, and God bless him, I wish he had kicked me out sooner. He dealt with a lot of shit with my mom and I. And he kicked me out of the house. I was on probation at that point for a DUI, and I had 4 felonies that were dismissed for future indictment. So I had violated my misdemeanor probation right away for my DUI. I was living in the woods over on the west side of Columbus with just the clothes on my back, and my 4 felony indictments came back. I was homeless for like 30 days. What I'll say about my time being homeless, couple things. I did not care what happened to me at that point. I was ready to go. I couldn't do it myself. We've talked about this before. I was too much of a coward to pull the trigger myself. But if I got hit by a car or shot or overdosed, I was cool with that. It didn't bother me. If I'd gone to prison, whatever. I didn't fucking care. Yeah, I didn't care about myself at all, man. And
like passively suicidal.
Yeah, it's the best way to describe it. I wanted to get sober. I wanted to get clean. I wanted things to get better. I had no idea how to do it. I couldn't get myself to go to treatment for whatever reason. And like I said earlier, man, I had to go to jail. And when those felony future indictments came back, I got picked up by the marshals. I remember the car rolled up next to me on a side street one day with like limo tent windows. And I knew what the limo tent meant, and I was going to jail. I was never a runner or a fighter. Right. I was always, you got me. Yeah. It's the game.
How long were you homeless for?
Like a month.
It was in the winter?
It was in the summer. Okay. People are very generous. Food was easy to get. Yeah. People don't want to give you cash. Right. Obvious reasons. Right. But man, there was something that was so freeing about that situation, and that might sound really insensitive, but for me, where I was at in my life, I didn't have to answer to anyone. I had no responsibilities. Right. I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to pay rent. I didn't have to pay bills. I didn't have to do shit. I had to go get $20 or $40 for the day. I was off the grid. Nobody knew really where I was. Like I said, I was passively suicidal, so it was kind of an okay place for me at the time. And so when I got picked up, I thought I was going to prison. I 100%, I was charged with 4 3 felony 5 possessions and an F3 conveyance. And I thought I was going to prison. So we go back down to the county jail. I sit for like 5 months waiting to go to court. I go to court, and the judge tells me she's going to put me on probation. But if I violate the probation, she will send me to prison for the maximum amount of time possible. And things changed for me when I heard that. You know, I was real fucking tough prior to that.
Right.
But when I got in that courtroom, hearing a judge say, I will send you to prison for as much time as I legally can, I got fucking scared. And I remember going back into the holding cell and thinking, if I take probation, I'm going to violate. I'm going to prison. I've been through this. Nothing changes. Every time I go to fucking jail, nothing changes. I get out, I do the same shit. So I asked my attorney if he could get me help. And he went out, talked to the prosecutor, talked to the judge, and they got me assessed for this drug court program, which I ended up taking down the road. They gave me this pamphlet that had all the requirements of the program, and I remember it was like, piss in a cup 5 times a week, go see the judge every Thursday, see your probation officer every Tuesday, go to 3 recovery meetings a week, go see a therapist, do an outpatient treatment. And I'm flipping through this book, and I'm thinking to myself, you're a fucking idiot. Why would you ever take this deal? You could have taken probation and rolled the dice, maybe completed. Right. Another piece of that was house arrest. I had to do that for like 90 days. And so I accept this drug court program, and I get released on a Wednesday. I was gone for 5 months. So I'm clean. You know, my body, everything's out of my body. I feel good. Friday rolled around, and I talked about the way this is a disease and there's a mental obsession. I got the bright idea to get high Friday morning. I'd been out 2 days on house arrest, nonetheless. Right. And it was early. I woke up early, 7:38 in the morning. You know, I thought to myself, if I get high the next hour, drink a bunch of water, you know, I'll just use once, just one time, which is a fucking fallacy. It's not a thing that if you're like me, you can't use one time. Right. But I convinced myself I could.
So you were on house arrest at this time. How were you able to go and cop the drugs?
He came to me.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
A workaround.
Yep. It was like the one drug dealer that was really good about that. He always came to me. It might take him 5 fucking hours. Right. He'll get there eventually. And if you've done drugs, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. It can take him 5, 6, 7 hours. So yeah, it's like 8 a.m. I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, all right, this will, you know, I have a fast metabolism. I'm really skinny. You know, I'm only going to use once, so it won't take, it's not a lot. It'll be out of my system by Monday morning. And I start doing all this math. I'm like, all right, cool. We're good. We're good to go. You'll pass the drug test. This will be just like a nice little celebration high, whatever. And I used. And I remember using in the second floor bathroom. Generally, I would always smoke a cigarette after I got high. And I went outside to smoke a cigarette, and I fell flat on my face in the front yard. The neighbors found me. When they found me, I was face down. I was blue. They called the squad. They brought me back. You know, I was alone in that house that day. And if the neighbors don't find me, if I don't make it outside, it's a mystery how I got outside. I don't remember walking outside, but if I don't make it outside, I die.
Divine intervention.
Yeah. I literally have no recollection of what happened after I snorted the heroin. I just know I got outside.
Right.
So when that happened, I woke up in the ambulance, looked down at my house arrest monitor. I say to myself, fuck, I'm off my monitor. That means I'm going back to jail. No way to explain a 6-hour gap. It's at the hospital. Yeah. And I decided I was going to be honest. And so I took my hospital paperwork. Monday morning rolled around. Jail wasn't a big deal to me at that point. So whatever, I'm going back. Went to see my house arrest officer and turned in my paperwork and said, this is what happened. I told her. I said, I overdosed, got high, you know, let me know what we're doing. Yeah. And I walk back there, probation hops out, you know, hands on the wall. All right, it's all good, guys. I'm not a fighter, remember? Yeah. Back to jail I go. I was only out for 5 days after doing 5 months. Certainly not a world record. but it was a personal record for me as far as how quickly I went back.
Right.
Never only been free 5 days before going back.
Yeah.
And I go back to jail. I sit for 3 more weeks, and I decide begrudgingly I'm going to do all the things they asked me to do, which entailed drug testing 5 days a week, going to see my probation officer every Tuesday, going to see the judge every Thursday, all these strenuous things. I was going to check their boxes.
Right.
And lo and behold, my life got better.
Right.
Because I wasn't drinking and using. Now, I wasn't working on myself. I hadn't put in any fucking work at all, but I had taken the drugs and the alcohol out of my body, and as a result, my life got better. I was miserable as fuck.
Right, because you didn't want to change.
Yeah.
You were doing it for the court.
Begrudgingly.
Right.
Yeah, it was literally anger driving me.
Right.
And that's a pattern that I have personally that I've used. It's like my coping mechanism.
Oh yeah, pride.
Whenever I don't like something,
it'll get you so far.
Yeah,
pride will. Yeah,
tell me I can't.
Yeah,
and I will. Right. All that shit. And it worked. It worked for 6 months. And then lo and behold, shortly after that, I relapsed. No surprise there. I did no work on myself, and I ended up in the minimum security prison where you were working at the time.
Yeah,
and I was there as an inmate. And people always use the term they had the sparks knocked out of them. By the time I got to that facility, I was done. Yeah. I couldn't fucking do any more time. I couldn't stand people telling me what to do. I'm an adult, and I can't even determine when I want to fucking piss, because the county's running my life.
Right.
There's a schedule.
Yeah.
And, I decided I was going to take some positive action and participate in my own recovery. Right. And I did. And I started taking suggestions. And it's so funny because I'm such a stubborn son of a bitch. When I started taking suggestions is when I started to turn the corner. The one thing I refused to do my entire fucking life.
Right.
I didn't want to listen to anyone, ever. I still don't. I'm still guilty.
Right.
And as soon as I started listening to other people, my life got better, much better.
Other inmates?
Other people in recovery. So people would come into the facility and they would bring in recovery meetings and they'd tell their story.
Right.
And they would say, hey, do X, Y, and Z if you want to stay sober. Mm-hmm. And I started to listen. And then I found that it started to work, and there was this like psychic change that took place in my head. My life started to get better, even in jail. Mm-hmm. I became free upstairs.
Right.
And that was new to me, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry if I've skipped over anything, but I'll tell you a little bit about what my life looks like today and some of the things I've been through in recovery. I mentioned that I'll show you attitude.
Right.
That never left me. And, while I did take suggestions and did listen to other people, I still wanted to show the judge, the probation officer, I wanted to show them that, like, not only was I doing the right thing, but I was going to go above and beyond. And so I asked the judge who sent me to jail to sit on a panel with me at an event in the community I grew up in. And he agreed. And that was my way of letting him know, like, I'm doing the right thing now. Right. I'm really putting forth the effort, and I want you to be an ally, not an enemy.
Right.
That's
a good point, Lewis. Like, there is good pride and bad pride, right? And bad pride, I talk about this all the time. When it's, I'll show you, watch me go, then that can be good.
Mm-hmm.
Proud of your work ethic, proud husband, proud father.
Right.
But when it's, I'll show you, I'll hurt me, that's when we are getting close to a relapse.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Sabotage.
And what it is that resentment that's inside of you, whatever it is you're trying to get back at. If it's me against the judicial system, I'm going to lose every fucking time.
Every time.
I'll never win that battle.
Man. That's a different weight class.
But it's exhausting,
Absolutely.
Carrying that resentment.
Right. And the discipline is just going to get further and further. Okay.
Yeah.
6 months probation. This isn't, okay. Jail. Okay. That's not prison. Oh, prison didn't do it. Well, what about 5?
Yeah.
It's just going to
5, 10. Yeah. And next thing you know, your fucking life is
career criminal
gone. Yeah. And I made a decision to make those people, and when I say those people, I mean the people who work in the judicial system, allies. Right. Because I thought about it one day. I was like, nobody ever actually makes these people do their job. And here's what I mean by that. The judge's job is to send people to prison. Right. That's part of his job description. Mm-hmm. But the other part is to help people. Right. You know, the probation officer, I mean, can correct me if I'm wrong, but technically their job is to fucking help you to rehabilitate yourself.
Yeah.
The problem is nobody ever asks for the fucking help.
Right.
You know, nobody ever goes to their PO and says, hey, man, I really want a new job. You know, and it happens. It does happen. I shouldn't say it never happens.
I hear you.
But like no one goes to their PO and says, hey, man, I'm really struggling with my mental health. Can you get me some resources? People don't fucking do that. Right. That's part of their job. And I stopped looking at them as enemies and said, I'm going to make these people allies. And, you know, not only did it benefit me, but it benefited other people.
Right. And then you went to the criminal justice system and worked yourself, right?
Yeah.
Did that give you a different outlook?
It did. I never in a million years, all the way back to when I was a kid, thought I'm going to work at a jail.
Right.
And certainly not after I'd been to jail. Because most people are like, I'm never fucking coming back here.
Right.
So, you know, I didn't plan on doing it. 2020, I worked in restaurants. COVID happened. Restaurants get closed. And I'd had that relationship with that judge because of some decisions I'd made and how to approach people in the judicial system. And I said, hey, man, I'd love to go work at that facility you sent me to that I was locked up at. And he said, I think you'd be a great fit. You know, you have the lived experience. I'll write you a reference letter. And to have a county job as a convicted felon, I mean, that was a big deal.
It is.
Like, you know, benefits, pension.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, fuck, thank God for an opportunity at a career.
Right.
That's how it felt to me.
Second chance.
You know, like this is it. This is amazing.
Right.
And I went and I applied and I got hired. And I worked my way up in that facility to the unit supervisor. My title was behavior supervisor. Yeah. And so I ran the unit that that had 70 inmates in it, but that I used to live on.
Yeah. And that's amazing right there. No matter how bad your day gets, when you're walking out, you're like, I used to be there was a time I couldn't just walk out.
I couldn't leave.
And now I'm leaving out of here every night at a certain time and I'm getting paid to do this.
I remember specifically one day, I was having a really shitty day. I don't remember why.
Yeah.
But I went and I sat in the segregation cell, the ISO cell, by myself. I went and sat in there for like a minute.
Yeah.
And I just sat on the fucking concrete slab where you put your mat down. I sat in there. I looked around. I said, no, you know, it's not so bad. Not such a bad day after all.
Right.
So I'm not in one of these.
Yeah, because you could still call yourself out of there with the radio, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like it was.
Before you wouldn't be able to.
No.
You were stuck in there until they let you out.
Somebody lets me out. And it was a nice reminder. And it really helped put things in perspective moving forward. And I will say, to this day, that is hands down my favorite job.
Absolutely.
Most fulfilling job. I mean, most days it didn't even feel like work because, you know, you get to go in there and you get to meet people from different walks of life. And I have this desire to help. And, you know, so I get to help guys and it was just so fulfilling. And you know what? We talked about that I'll show you thing. And that was another notch in my fucking belt.
Yeah.
No one ever thought I was going to go do that.
Oh, really? Convicted felons don't work here?
Yeah.
Why? That's not, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, bet your ass when I left, I started, I took a role in sales. I do sales now. But when I left that facility, you know, I sat there and I said to myself, as of today, you are the only inmate to work your way into management in the history of that facility, as far as I know. And that was a huge thing for me, just to be able to say, like, you know, I did that, and not only did I do that, I helped people while I was there. And you know, part of what I do today, you know, the podcast that I have, I get an opportunity to bring guys on no different than you're doing now that were incarcerated when I worked there, and give them a platform to tell their stories.
It's crazy how parallel our lives are now.
Yeah, I never thought in a million years I would be comfortable, because, you know, my studio currently is in my apartment.
Right.
And I just fucking let these guys in. You know?
And you're in here.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, thinking about this back when you were an inmate when I was working there. I would have...
No. It would have been a joke.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been a joke. And to to be like, yeah, come on into my house. And the coolest thing about that is not to say that I get to do that,
right?
But I really don't look at them as anybody differently than myself.
Right. Likewise.
I mean, like, I invite them. I don't think twice. I don't think, oh, they have a criminal record. Oh, what if they case my shit out?
Yeah.
If they do, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not look at them as any less than me. You know, we're on the same playing field.
That's it.
Yeah, man, my life in recovery has been fantastic. You know, I've gone on a bunch of vacations. I've traveled, you know, things I thought I'd never do. I've also dealt with heartache in recovery. Life's going to happen. You know, I lost my mom, as I mentioned, in recovery. I lost my dad a year ago to cancer. You know, I'm 33 years old. I didn't expect to not have parents at 33. Yeah. I also didn't expect to shoot up heroin.
Right.
So life's going to happen.
Yeah.
Life on life's terms. Mm-hmm. I know as long as I stay in recovery and I continue to help people the way I have been, that I'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's like, you know, we still get high in a way, Lewis. It's not the same, but this is a high.
Yeah.
Am I right? When you bring
100%.
someone up, when you go lead a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
You get lifted up by that, right?
Yep.
You're pulling someone out of the dirt that you used to be in. You're seeing that hope in their eyes. You see that you inspired somebody.
Yeah.
You know, achievement's the new drug of choice, man, and so is inspiring other people. And you're inspiring 100%. A lot of people.
Yeah, man, I do it for me. Mm-hmm. You know, I do it for me because a lot of people talk about how recovery is selfish. And if I'm being honest, all of the things I've done, the speaking, the schools, the judge, the panel, first and foremost, it was for Lewis. Okay, so that Lewis can stay sober.
Right.
The second reason is to help other people, but the second reason doesn't happen if I don't hit the first reason.
I gotcha.
I don't do that stuff to stay sober. How the hell am I going to help someone? If I don't stay sober, I'm not helping anyone.
Right.
So it is for Lewis first, for my recovery, so that I can like function in this world.
Yeah.
But secondly, very close second, it's for those other people. And if this helps one person,
right. Well, that's how we keep it, right? That's how we keep it. We got to give it back in order to keep it. We are indirectly affirming those values when we tell someone else how to stay sober. It helps us stay sober. It's the whole give back, each one teach one philosophy. And man, you're an inspiration to me, Lewis. And I got a couple questions for you. Number one.
Okay.
Back in 2020, we touched on this. I looked at our old video just to carry on this. I wanted this to be more of a continuation.
Sure.
So I had asked you about purpose. And I know you're doing sales now. And at one point you were doing this, you were in this field and you were doing like a recovery in the field and you're doing your podcast. But what's your purpose today? And where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I'll answer the second question first.
Okay.
Because I was asked this question a couple months back on a different podcast and I didn't have an answer.
Okay.
And I still don't have an answer because there's one thing that I've learned over the past 8 years is I have no fucking idea what's going to happen next. I don't. I didn't expect my dad to get cancer. I didn't expect to do all the things I've done. Who's to say? I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. I don't know what's going to happen in a year. And losing my dad really put things into perspective for me about life. And, you know, you only live once and travel, do the things that you want to do. Because I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. So I can't necessarily answer the second question about where I'm going to be in 5 years. I hope I'm a wildly successful podcaster with a bank account full of money and an emotional bank account that's full from helping people.
Right.
I mean, that's all I can do is speculate. My purpose, I'd love to sit here and tell you that it's to help people. And even what I do in sales is helping people. I show people how to grow their business. That's what I do. I'm in marketing.
Yeah.
My goal is to help you grow your business. If you did $1 million in revenue last year, I'm going to show you how to do 2 this year.
Okay.
Obviously, all the stuff I do in the community gives me purpose and fulfills me. I think that's only not a small part, it's a large part of my purpose, but I don't think I've discovered what that other percentage is yet.
Okay.
So I didn't, it's kind of gave you non-answers to both your questions.
Hey, it's honest.
But it's the truth, that's great. You know?
And here's my other question for you. A lot of times in recovery, you know, we're not using the drug of choice anymore. We're not doing the alcohol. We're not partying. Do you find yourself trying to find gratification in other areas? And if so, how do you deal with that in a productive way?
Good question. So I have done the whole addiction swapping thing before. I've gone through gambling. I still gamble. I mean, fuck, man. What time is it? The Monday night game starts soon. You know what I mean? Like, I was thinking that shit when I was driving over here.
That's funny.
So I still struggle with that. I mean, of course, anything that I can do to excess, that's going to make me feel good.
When we enjoy something, we engulf ourselves.
Yeah,
in it, right?
yeah. I mean, fuck, even this podcast thing.
That's an addiction.
I mean, because I just want it to be the best now.
Yeah.
You think I would have learned by now.
How do you know when to pump the brakes on it?
Yeah. I think we talked about this last time. I always talk about good days being scarier than bad days. So if I'm having a really emotionally shitty day, it's not hard for me to go home, fucking sink into my couch, play some video games, call it a day. But when I'm having a really good day, that's when I want to place an extra bet. That's when I want to pick up a drink or a drug.
Right.
That's when I want to have sex.
Yeah.
That, like, those good days are the days that I want to make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
A little bit better.
Right.
And you know, the only way that I found to deal with, we call them urges, I guess. I don't know, urges, whatever, desires, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. The only thing that's worked for me is helping somebody else just like me.
Perfect.
That's what alleviates it.
Yeah. So that's a good indicator of what would define someone as an alcoholic or an addict. For me, when I was at a party and I'm drinking, I would be the last one to want to leave the party. Bar's closing. It's 2:15. They're saying last call. I'm like, what are you talking? Last call? I'm just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
5-6 beers. That's a warm up, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever drug I'm using. That's the difference between people like us. I think it's that fact that good is not good. Good can always get better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing now is we just have to recognize it and know when something's getting out of control. If we're being obsessive with something, it's like, you know, when I started this podcast, I was, my wife was like, hey, I need some more quality time. You know, I was down here every night editing for hours and hours. Like even something good can be something bad if we
had that talk as well.
Engulf ourselves in it.
Yeah.
But that's great, man. You're doing a lot for the community. And we're going to wrap this up. This was Louis Essig. He's got a podcast. It's very entertaining. He talks about incarceration, addiction, rehabilitation, all that stuff. Make sure you tune into him. As always, guys, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
So this is how we end up. Shades of blue and gray. I feel just like an empty bottle. My dreams are on delay. I just wanna climb on top of a hill and throw it all away, away. Take me far away before my mind spins off and I am all derailed.